Hello and welcome back to the shop. Today we are going to take a look at what I think is a pretty innovative set from Klein tools, and we're going to get into why I think that. So this is a pass-through set that has some very unique sockets in it, and we're going to take a look at those in just a minute. So it's an SAE set. There is no metric in here. It's got some of the standard sockets we've seen before. It's got the PassThrough Ratchet, the extension, the adapters, but it's also got some other cool stuff. So let's take a look at the back here. It shows some of what comes in here, and it also makes note, if you're keeping track, made in Taiwan. So let's get into this thing. Okay, for starters, everything is packaged very nicely. They do a really good job of making these cases, and I think they're going to hold up pretty well because you can see there's some impact resistivity built in, and everything's just kind of laid out pretty good. Now if you take notice on the lid, I don't know if you can see that very well or not, but everything is kind of grooved for the sockets that it has in it, to try and hold everything in place when the lid is closed. So to start with, we'll take a look at the standard sockets that we've seen before in either the 1/4 or 3/8 sets that we looked at. Here is your 1/4 to 5/16, and this has that classic Knect hex drive. Put that right on there, and you can even use your favorite impact gun. Not a whole lot of loss there. It wiggles a little bit, but not really a whole lot. Runs pretty good. So that's a nice option for running that on your impact gun. All the way up through the 9/16. Also has this hex drive, and that'll look like this on your impact. Pretty nice and compact. It's like having a basic deep socket on there. Doesn't wiggle real bad. Now if you wanted to get out a little bit further, you could get this driver and get that, your 9/16 on there. And an advantage to this one is that you say you have 9/16 and 7/16, you can take your 7/16 socket along and have it so you can flip everything around, and then you're driving your 7/16, and you can stow away your 9/16, put that on your impact, and there you go. Now, just like all of these other sets, if you had some of the shallow sockets as well, you could throw them in the mix here too and put them right on the same thing. And the only difference is the depth of the socket. You can drive these, so you see this comes with a magnetic tip. There's the magnet here. But you can drive these deep sockets with the magnetic tip socket driver. Now the magnet's probably not overly useful to you all the way down in there, but you can still drive these sockets with this same driver. So everything's pretty versatile, which is really nice. Okay, now taking a look at the deeper socket, the larger sockets, these have a 3/8 square drive, and that is this adapter. You can put that on here, and then here is your 3/4 drive, just like that. It's kind of like having just a regular deep socket on there. One thing I do like about this is, say you don't have this, but you have a regular 3/8 drive ratchet. What you can do if you have an old school 3/8 ratchet extension is stick that in here, and you can still drive this with your classic Klein tools, likely made by SK ratchet, and still get the job done if you happen to not have one of these spline drive ratchets. So you're not completely locked in on everything if you don't have this spline drive ratchet. That includes the smaller sizes. You can take your regular old school ratchet and take your 9/16 and throw it on there, and you can use this socket with a regular old ratchet. So that's kind of nice. You're not completely stuck with these ratchets to do everything. The tools have some versatility built into them for backwards compatible use. Now, what is the very innovative part of this? Right here. Something I really like about this set are these sockets. These sockets are a through hex, and we'll look at the 9/16. That is very, very small, and what this allows you to do is put that in this ratchet and look at that thin profile. And that is super handy, and at this point you're almost on par. It's thicker, but you see where we're going. You're almost on par with your old school ratcheting wrench. It's nice and compact. If they came out with these sockets in quarter, now granted you'd only probably get up to the 7/16, you wouldn't get the 9/16 out of it. You can see 9/16 is right there. You're not going to get much larger than 9/16 through this, but super, super neat idea with a pass-through ratchet. I don't know why nobody made these years ago, but all the years pass-through ratchets have been out, I have not seen anybody with these. Now, that's not to say they're not out there. If you know of one that goes back pretty far, let me know in the comments below. I find stuff like this super fascinating, but I've had Craftsman, Husky, Stanley pass-through ratchets over the years, and I've never seen sockets quite like this. And I have to mention it, they actually have an 11/32, which I think is really nice. I've said before a bunch of times on the channel that light fixtures use 8/32 fasteners, and that takes an 11/32 hex to drive. So that's what that looks like, nice and slender. And if for some reason you don't need it that slender, you can always take your extension, stick it on here, and stick your socket on there, and it still pass through. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. Everything holds reasonably well. You can see I'm not just pulling it apart, but if I pull a little harder, they will come out. I don't know long term how this is going to hold up, but they're not atrocious. They hold reasonably well. It would be great if they had some sort of locking mechanism, but that would be really hard to do. The extension, you could do it easier than the ratchet. It would be really hard to do with the ratchet the way this is made. But have your extension. They even have a 9/32. I don't think that's a common one to get into in the trades, but interesting to see that it's there. I don't think there's a whole lot other sizes that you could possibly want than what we see here. Now on to the thing that I don't like about this set, and that is it's missing something. And to me, it's something that is really interesting that they left out. And they even make the tool. So this is from another set. There is no way to drive this socket with this impact gun in this set. So everything's built around being impact rated. It's really interesting to me that they didn't include this 3/8 to quarter hex adapter. With this, I can put this 3/4 combination with 5/8 deep socket in the impact gun and get the old Ugga Duggas out of it. I'm not sure why they didn't include that, but we saw that in the other hex 3/8 set that we did a video on. They even had a place they could have put it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can either get one of these. It's got to be a pretty long adapter. You can't just go with any old adapter. You got to have a pretty long one because you can see how it goes into the tool to drive from the center. So you have to have a pretty long 3/8 to quarter adapter. But that works great. You can run your tools off of your impact. So I'm going to see if I can get one of those and wing it in here. Then it's a long width for the ride. We have it if we need it. For point of reference, if anybody wants to look up getting something that is not this Klein one, you need one that is about 2.5 inches overall length, and that will work with these sockets. Now that we've talked about something that I don't particularly like, something else that I left out is you can drive your very slim sockets with this adapter, and if you needed to make it longer, you could always put on your extension and get you a little bit more depth, so your bolt heads can get up inside here if you're working with rack or something like that. Again, everything holds together reasonably well. The socket's the first thing to pull out, so that gets you some versatility there, that you can use all of these pieces with an impact gun, like we said, with the exception of these two sockets. That also goes then that if you're using the handle for this set that we first looked at, you can chuck it up in here, and then you can drive any of these with this, and you've made, albeit kind of janky, you've now made a nut driver. So all of these things kind of intermix and work hand in hand with each other to give you some versatility on the job site. That nut driver was a little janky, but if that's all you have with you and it gets you through, it'll work. So that's kind of the thing with these tools, is they don't actually have a specific use in mind, I don't think. I think they're trying to be as general as possible so that you have as much versatility and as small as package possible. So there's always going to be compromises there. And that's something that you just need to keep in mind when you get into this stuff, that, yeah, all the parts and pieces kind of go together and it's a lot of stuff. A good comment was made that they're kind of like Legos, and I think that's a really good representation of how these things are. It's kind of, you build it to what you need it to be at the time, and it does everything relatively decent, but nothing like your traditional tools because you're used to them. So just keep all that in mind. Now, one more thing we can check here. When we checked the 3/8 ratchet, we had a fair amount of back drag. We actually maxed out our scale on our inch ounces. Let's see what we get this time with essentially the same ratchet body. Let's see what we get. So we have our 3/8 adapter in here, and let's see what we get. So let me get that on an angle that you can see it. Yeah, we're maxing the scale out again. I'm not really surprised by that. It's essentially the same 90-tooth ratchet with a different anvil. There you have the two next to each other. You can see it's essentially the exact same thing. All they've done is make a 3/8 anvil for the inside of this ratchet. Actually, I do see a little bit of a difference. If you look here, it's a little bit more pear-shaped than this one. Overall, it's essentially the same thing, but they did change it a little bit. That's really fascinating to me. I would have thought that it would have been the exact same thing. Now maybe that's the fit and finish process, but you can see here they are not identical. Obviously they have a different part number, but overall it's the same tool. So I think that's interesting. I assumed it was exactly the same thing, but it is very, very close. This is rounded a little bit better than this. Interesting. So there you go. Overall, I think this is a really neat set. I love the innovation with these very, very shallow sockets. I think that is missing from the through ratchet industry, let's say, or the through ratchet tool lines. I'll be curious to see if they come up with a metric. I'm sure they will. I really like this. It's super versatile for a lot of places. So here you kind of have the yin and yang. You have something somewhat deep and something really shallow. So overall, I think this is a really good way of getting a lot of versatility out of a product that you don't have to have as much stuff. I mean, if you took all of this out of this box and threw it in a classic canvas bag, it wouldn't take up a whole lot of room. You'd easily get it all in there. So I think that's something that is a nice thing about this. You're not locked into this case. You can put it in a canvas bag if you want. I will say from experience, these cases do get dirty easily. They're porous on the outside and they do show the dirt. So if you're worried about those types of things, just know that. If you have this, let me know in the comments below. What do you think about these super shallow sockets? I think it's great. I'll be curious to know what you guys think. If you have them, have you used them? Where have they worked great? Have you had issues with them? How about the rest of the set? Are you disappointed that they didn't include the one piece you need to use an impact with everything in here? If you are, which brand of adapter did you use? Like I said, if we're around 2.5 inches, you can get that to work and use with these two sockets. Everything else in here will work with an impact, but these two sockets. I should say 1/4 inch hex impact. You can use your standard 3/8 ratchet if you wish. You have adapters for all of that. You can kind of go back and forth however you feel, which I think is great. If you have any other interesting anecdotes about this, I'd like to know. Let me know in the comments below. I think that stuff's always interesting. So as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.